Welcome, everyone, to the last keynote of the evening. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I just wanted to remind you all that we will be having the Port of Honor, which I think they say as Porto de Honra, something like that. So immediately following this keynote in the chapel. So if you go to the cloisters area, we will direct you to where to go to the chapel. There will be a musical performance starting right away, and then we will be celebrating the 50th year of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children, which is really exciting. So I am honored to introduce our next keynote speaker, Denise Fleith. Denise is a full professor at the Institute of Psychology at the University of Brasilia, a researcher at the National Council for Scientific and Technological Development in Brazil, and a member of the Scientific and Educational Board of the Brazilian Network of Science for Education. She earned her doctoral degree in Gifted and Talented Education from the University of Connecticut and completed postdoctoral studies at the University of Minho in Portugal. She has also been a member of a task force at the Brazilian Ministry of Education to develop an educational policy on special education from an inclusion perspective. Her publications include books, book chapters, and articles on school psychology, creativity, and gifted education. Denise has been a great thought partner during her term as president over the last 4 years, and on her entire time as an executive committee member since I've known her since 2013. I greatly value her contributions and her collaboration. So please join me in welcoming Denise to the stage.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to present this keynote on creativity, specifically on how to assess and nurture creative abilities within the school environment. This year marks 4 years of my journey in this field, and I can think of no better way to celebrate this milestone than by being here with all of you. In the 80s, I was an undergraduate student at the University of Brasilia in Brazil, when I took an elective course called Psychology of Creativity with Dr. Eunice Alencar, who had earned her PhD in the United States with Dr. John Feldhusen, a very well-known researcher in the field. And I was fascinated by the content, and in fact, it was the first time I had ever heard the term giftedness. And I had no idea that creativity could be studied from a scientific point of view. So a few months later, when I graduated, I happened to run into Dr. Alencar at the university, and she invited me to work on a creativity project with her. At that time, I had no job, and when she offered me a scholarship, I gladly accepted. So that was the beginning of my journey in the field of creativity. And it's truly amazing to be here today sharing the work I have done over the past 4 years. I'd like to thank the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children for this opportunity, for the invitation, this opportunity to be here with all of you. And it's a privilege to share this moment with all of you. Okay. First, I would like to thank the Jody Mahoney Center for Gifted Education at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock for its generous support of this presentation. My sincere appreciation for all the center has done for gifted children. In this presentation, I will discuss the reasons for investing in creativity, how creativity has been defined, and why and how it should be assessed. I will also explore how to foster creativity in the school environment. Then I will present 2 approaches to fostering creativity in the classroom: teaching creatively and teaching for creativity. In addition, I will examine the role of the curriculum and the school culture, and either inhibiting or fostering creativity in the classroom. Finally, I will share the results of some studies I have conducted over the past 40 years. So, my first question, why invest in creativity? According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation in Development, OECD, students must develop transformative competence, such as innovative thinking, open-mindedness, and resilience in order to meet the challenge of the 21st century. And these skills require a strong emphasis on creativity. As you may know, creativity enables students not only to solve problems, but also to ask meaningful questions, thinking divergently, collaborate effectively, navigating conflict ideas, and maintain an open mindset. Most importantly, creative outcomes bring meaning and joy to our lives. There is plenty of empirical evidence supporting the assumption, the idea that creativity is associated with psychological well-being and vice versa. Engaging in creative activities can have therapeutic benefits by fostering flow experiences, enhance positive emotions, and help individuals find meaning in difficult experience. Recently, creative thinking has become a key focus of the Program for International Student Assessment, PISA, reflecting a growing recognition of the role of new innovative ideas in society progress. International assessment of creativity, such as the one proposed by PISA, could inspire research to explore strategies for nurturing, to motivate policymakers to implement curriculum reforms, and empower educators to adopt new pedagogical approach. Here we have some results of PISA assessment of creativity around the world. Singapore, Korea, Canada, and Australia are the highest performing systems in creative thinking, with an average student score of 37 points or above, significantly higher than the OECD average, which is 33 score points. Students in Singapore achieve an average score of 41 points, the highest. And interestingly, most of the countries and economies that score above the OECD average in creative thinking also outperform the OECD average in mathematics, reading, and science. It's interesting to note that in no PISA economy or country did boys score above girls in creative thinking. This is very good news. In addition, students with higher socioeconomic status perform better in creative thinking. This is not a very good news. Anyway, as you can see in this table, Portugal, our host country, scored 34 points, slightly higher than the OECD average. On the other hand, Brazil, my home country, scored lower, 23 points. So we can ask, how can schools prepare students to appreciate different perspectives, interact respectfully with peers, take responsible actions towards a sustainable environment, and individual and collective well-being? We can approach this challenge at different levels. At the research level, we can focus on produce evidence-based knowledge. At the legislative level, we can implement curriculum and education policies that foster creativity. And we can also work to transform school culture and school climate to better support creative thinking. And finally, we must equip teachers with the knowledge to identify creativity and understand the conditions that nurture it. As you may know, creativity can be defined in many ways. Oops. The next one. As you may know, creativity can be defined in many ways. Several models of creativity, both classic and contemporary models, seek to explain it. While these models differ, they all agree that creativity arises from the interaction of multiple components. And we cannot overlook the influence of social cultural facts in either fostering or inhibiting creativity. As you may know, creativity is not a static trait, nor does it depend solely on the individual. It's a relational and interactive phenomenon. So, to fully understand creativity, we must consider a network of factors that interact, such as personality, cognitive and thinking styles, motivation, knowledge background, society values, zeitgeist, constraints, social practices, historical context, and available opportunities. Therefore, to understand creativity, we need to shift our focus from products to process, from individuals to relationships, from personality traits to interactions, from possession of creative abilities to sharing and exchange creativity, from universal assessment to contextual assessment of creativity. Therefore, nurturing creative talent is a social rather than strictly personal achievement. What we call creativity is shaped by social interactions and collaborative exchange. Sharing and exchange creative ideas, creative talents, and creative actions relies on empathy, perspective taking, and openness toward ideas and others. So, how do you know whether or not an original idea, original solution is worth implementing? Who is to judge what's valuable? Why to assess creativity in the school environment? What are the advantages? So, assessing creativity may help educators recognize students' potential, especially those abilities that might otherwise go unnoticed, may help educators plan effective instruction tailored to nurturing creativity, help identify areas where teachers may need professional development, and help students to become aware of their creative potential. Therefore, assessing creativity may help instructional planners evaluate the effectiveness of educational materials, curriculums, programs, and practices, provide the students with feedback information, formative feedback, increasing their awareness of their own creative potential, and promote the establishment of a school culture that values creative expression and acknowledge its importance. And personally, I believe that international assessment of creativity, such as the one proposed in PISA, can play a crucial role in helping countries worldwide recognize the value of creativity, encourage schools to invest in creativity, and foster environments that support students in pursuing innovative outcomes. We have conducted a systematic literature review on creativity assessment in education in order to identify procedures and instruments used to assess the extent to which creativity has been fostered in the classrooms. Our search focused on empirical articles published between 2018 and 2023 in four key creativity research journals: the Journal of Creative Behavior, Creativity Research Journal, Psychology of Aesthetic, Art, Creativity and the Arts, and Thinking Skills and Creativity. A total of 258 articles initially met our inclusion criteria. And after full text assessment for eligibility, 122 articles were included in our analysis. We identified 208 instruments or methods used to assess creativity. As expected, assessment tests were the most common, especially the Torrent test of creative thinking. The second most frequently used approach was self-assessment. Product-based approaches were adopted in 29 studies, and this approach involves asking students to create a product, for example, a collage or a drawing that would be evaluated by judges. And one example of this approach is the conceptual assessment technique proposed by Amabo. Qualitative approaches such as observation and interviews were identified in 18 studies. And finally, rating scales were rarely used, with only 3 studies employing them. And when we were analyzing this data, one point called our attention. We note that most studies focus on assessing individuals' levels of creativity, essentially asking, how creative is the student? And our question was, why assess only a student level of creativity? Why not to evaluate the classroom climate for creativity? Why not to assess the extent to which creativity has been nurtured in the classroom? And as Csikszentmihalyi suggests, it's often easier to enhance creativity by changing environmental conditions rather than simply trying to make individuals to think more creatively. And also, we cannot overlook the crucial role schools play in fostering creativity. As mentioned by Amabo, of all the social and environment factors that might influence creativity, most can be found in some form in the classroom. In Brazil, we have designed and obtained validity evidence of some instruments that assess the climate for creativity in the classroom. I will present 2 of them. The first one is named the Classroom Climate for Creativity Scales, with 22 items to be answered on a 5-point scale, ranging from never to always, represented by 5 happy faces of graduated sizes. And the audiences consist of 3rd and 4th grade students. And this instrument assesses 5 factors: teacher support to students' ideas expression, students' self-perception on creativity, students' interests for learning, students' autonomy, and teachers' incentive to the production of students' idea. This is the cover page of the instrument with the instructions for the respondents, and this is the instrument. And these are some examples of the items to be responded by the students. In my classroom, the teachers pays attention to my idea. In my classroom, my ideas are welcome. And in my classroom, I think I am creative. Another instrument we have developed in Brazil is the Inventory of Teaching Practices for Creativity in Higher Education. And of course, the target audience is university students. And this inventory includes 37 items rated on a 5-point scale, ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And it assesses 4 factors: incentive to new ideas, climate for expression of ideas, evaluation and teaching methodology, and interests for students' learning. Here is the cover page with the instructions for the respondent, and these are some items of the instrument. So, for example, the professor in my school psychology class, or in my development psychology class, or in my biology class, cultivates students' interest regarding discoveries and new knowledge, encourages students to examine different aspects of a problem, and value students' original ideas. It's important to highlight that the students assess the climate for creativity in a specific class, not in general. A Portuguese version of the Inventory of Teaching for Practices for Creativity in Higher Education is also available. And a study conducted by a team of Portuguese and Brazilian research led by Dr. Fátima Moraes from the University of Minho provide validated evidence for the instrument in the Portuguese context. And this version contains fewer items than the Brazilian version, but it assesses the 4 factors. And you can assess the instrument through the link provided in the slide. And it's interesting to note that I have received requests to use this instrument from various countries, especially from graduate students internationally. Well, we have talked about how to assess creativity. My next question is, how to foster students' creativity in schools? Although creativity has been considered an essential competence for students to deal with the challenge of the century, we have evidence that teachers have often faced difficulties in transferring what they know about creativity to their practices. Sometimes may felt unprepared for this task, or they considering fostering creativity outside of the scope of their responsibility. And we can explain this scenario, at least partially, by limited preserve and service professional development opportunity, vast amounts of content to be covered. In Brazil, this is very, very usual, and emphasis on academic achievement. However, I would like to highlight that providing favorable conditions for creativity to flourish in schools does not depend only on the teacher. It's important to highlight that educational policies, school administration, resource, and partnership between school and families are important dimensions to be considered. So, how to foster creativity in the school setting? I'd like to talk about two procedures. One is to teach creatively, and the other is to teach for creativity. While teaching creatively, focus on teacher practices, teaching creativity casts light on learner thinking and behaviors. Both processes are interconnected and help to promote creativity in the classroom. Therefore, teaching creatively focus on teacher attitudes and actions in the classroom, and teaching for creativity focus on what behaviors, abilities, and skills are expected students to develop to learn. So, what can I say about teaching creatively? Here we have some suggestions. For example, teachers can provide learning experience that are meaningful and enjoyable to the students. They can provide learning experience that are in line with students' abilities, interests, and learning preference. They can provide opportunities for students to learn within the context of real-world problems. They can give students the opportunity to choose problems they are interested in investigating. Teachers should emphasize collaboration rather than competition. And teachers should provide informative feedback, which means clearly highlights which aspects of a student's work need revision and which are very well executed. And finally, teachers can encourage students to reflect on their own thinking process and strategy on solving a problem or generate an idea or product. In a study I conducted with elementary school teachers and students about the perception of creativity in the classroom, the results indicate that both teachers and students believe that a classroom environment that enhances creativity provides students with choices, accept different ideas, boost self-confidence, focus on the students' strengths and interests, and allow students free time. In this particular study, students mentioned bonus Friday, when they could choose what to do for 1 hour on Friday. On the other hand, in an environment that inhibits creativity, ideas are ignored, teachers are very controlling, mistakes are not allowed, one right answer is required, and excessive structure exists. Therefore, teaching creatively requires from teacher attitudes such as be tolerant of student errors, reward courage and protect the students from criticism and pressure to conform, provide time for students to think of new ideas, take students' questions seriously, focus on students' strengths instead of their difficulties. And I'd like to mention Del Siglo from the University of Connecticut when he recommended be a talent scout instead of a deficit detective, and have positive expectations of students' performance, value creative behaviors, products, and ideas, and welcome different perspectives. And how about teaching for creativity? What do we expect from our students? What kind of behavior, attitudes, abilities associated with creativity they may develop? Here we have some examples that can guide teachers, parents, educators. They can encourage, for example, students to think of many original and meaningful ideas, to accept challenges and defend their ideas, to recognize, define, and find problems, as mentioned yesterday by Dr. Alabasi, the early scholar career recipient, to analyze a situation from different viewpoints, to generate multiple hypotheses to explain a phenomenon, to explore consequences for the future, to ask a question, to see overlaps and similarities. In addition to teaching, what other dimensions of the school environment contribute to fostering students' creativity? So we cannot neglect the role of the curriculum in fostering creativity. The characteristics and the structure of a curriculum should also be considered in plenty ways to prepare students for creative productivity. So what kind of curriculum foster creativity? So the literature has recommended, for example, a curriculum that addresses real-world problems, relates to learning experience, appeals to students' imagination, a curriculum that's flexible to accommodate different students' needs, presents all subjects, both arts and science, as having the same high level of relevance, presents content multimodality, and provides for edification and discussion of unsolved problems in different domains. Here we have a few more examples of a curriculum that can foster creativity. I would like to highlight 2 or 3 of them. It's a curriculum that emphasizes the value of developing social-emotional skills, enables students to create both and through technology as part of their learning experience, and as mentioned by Dr. Dave Dye a couple of days ago, let's focus on the good part of technology and offer students opportunity to explore ethical considerations and creative ideas and products. Well, how about the school culture towards creativity? To what extent creativity is valued in the school environment? What school culture encourages creativity? You can say that is the one that celebrates students' creative contributions, builds collaborative partnership with creative people within and beyond the schools. It supports teachers who want to make a difference with innovative practices. In the environment that inhibits creativity, it can be characterized, for example, as the one where teachers lack of knowledge about pedagogical practices that support students' creativity. And I'd like to highlight that it's important teachers recognize the importance of creativity, but they don't know always how to implement creativity in the classroom. And other inhibiting factors are choices are restricted, there are low expectations regarding students' performance, traditional is preferred to changing, the focus is on judging ideas rather than producing ideas, and knowledge and assessment are centered in the past. I'd like to mention here, Dr. Renzulli mentions 2 types of assessment: assessment of learning and assessment for learning. Assessment of learning is related to what the students already knows. The focus is on the past learning. Assessment for learning, on the other hand, is related to what the students want to learn, considering their preference, interest, their strengths. The focus is what they can learn, and I would say that it's a kind of prospective learning approach. And that's the type, a type of assessment we'd like to see in our schools. Finally, the last part of my presentation focuses on what does the research review. I'd like to share with you the findings from studies I have conducted in Brazil over the past 4 years, and I have selected a few of them to present to you. The first studies on creativity I conducted in Brazil focus on the effects of creativity training on cognitive variables such as school achievement and creative thinking abilities, and on affective variables such as self-concept and motivation. And these studies were carried out during the 80s and 90s. And at that time, we trained many teachers in Brazil on how to foster their students' creativity. Toward the end of the 90s, for my doctoral dissertation, I investigated the effects of creativity training programs on the creative abilities and self-concept of monolingual and bilingual sixth grade students. This study was conducted in a school in the northeast region of the United States, and participants were distributed into 4 groups: monolingual, bilingual, treatment, and control groups. The bilingual students were Brazilian immigrants in the US. And at this school where I collect my data, Brazilian students were placed in a separate class from the American students. It was a different type of pedagogical arrangement. Bilingual classroom consists of Brazilian students and monolingual classrooms of American students. Then teachers implemented the program's new directions in creativity in the treatment group, and this program was designed by Rizuli, who was my advisor for my PhD, and I had meetings with teachers to discuss and monitor the implementation of the program. And we administered the Torrent test of creative thinking and the self-perception profile for children. We administered these instruments to the participants pre- and post-intervention. And teachers and students from the treatment group were also interviewed. And here we have some key finds of this study. The program slightly improved the creative abilities of students in the treatment group. The effects on increasing self-concept was very small. Placement in monolingual or bilingual classroom was not related to students' creative abilities or self-concept, and the program had a positive impact on the self-concept of less academically able students according to their teachers. In another study, we compared the creativity and the classroom climate for creativity of 174 fourth grade students from open, intermediary, and traditional schools. Schools with open methodology, intermediary methodology, and traditional pedagogical methodology. And to classify these schools in these 3 kinds of methodology, you use the following criteria: the type of pedagogical methodology used, the guiding principles of its pedagogy, the organization of the physical space, the school schedule, the student learning assessment, the activities developed, and the type of material used by the students. We expect that students from open schools would perform better on creativity. However, the findings indicate no difference among the 3 groups with respect either to creativity or the classroom climate for creativity. So we conclude that pedagogical methodology was not found to influence the students' creativity. And one possible explanation is that creativity has been a topic more discussed and more valued in the schools nowadays. And in addition, we concluded that it's not possible to state which school or which methodology is the best. Depends on the student's interest, the student's needs, the student's characteristics. One methodology may be more appropriate than others. and therefore promote their creativity. However, it's important to highlight that the design of this study does not allow us causal inferences. In another study, we investigate motivation mathematics, general creativity, and mathematical creativity among 100 high school students. Given the ongoing discussion on creativity research about domain-specific versus domain-general creativity, we designed and conducted a study to explore the issue further. Here we have some key finds of this. I found them very interesting. Regarding motivation mathematics, male students demonstrate a high score in 2 of the 6-factor measure, games and challenges and problem solving. In contrast, female students obtain a high score only in the factor study habits. No significant difference were noticed between male and female students with respect to general creativity. However, male students demonstrate superior performance compared to female students in mathematical creativity. One of my grad students, my PhD students, he was a mathematician, he designed an instrument to measure mathematical creativity. So the results of this study indicate high scores among male regarding mathematical creativity, and of course, these finds prompt us to consider the influence of social and cultural practices shaped by gender stereotypes, as previously discussed by many researchers in the field. And the results of the study also reinforce the need to investigate domain-specific creativity rather than focusing solely on general creativity. Another study, as the topic of technology has become a relevant object of study in the field of creativity, we decided to conduct a study whose purpose was to investigate the role of technology in fostering students' creativity and motivation in university classrooms. So we had 249 university students, and they were distributed in 3 groups. The first group consists of students whose professors use information communication technology creatively, and these professors have been awarded by using technology creatively in the classroom. The second group consisted of students whose professors made traditional use of technology in the classroom, such as PowerPoints. And the third group consists of students whose professor did not use information technology communication at all. And the participants completed the inventory of teaching practice for creativity and higher education and the motivation scale for learning. And the results were very, very, very interesting. Students in no use of technology group, surprisingly, evaluate professors' encouragement of new ideas, climate for expression of ideas, and teach methodology and evaluation more positively compared to the traditional use of technology group and the creative use of technology group. And with respect to extrinsic motivation of learning, students in no use of technology group had lower mean scores compared to the creative use of technology group. No significant difference were found among the group with respect to intrinsic motivation. And one possible explanation for these results was that when teachers use technology creatively, find ways to foster students' creativity through technology, these actions primarily enhance the teacher's own creativity rather than directly fostering students' creativity. Teachers were so engaging in finding ways to enhance the students' creativity through technology that it in turn stimulates their own creativity. And we have also to think of how technology has been used in the classroom as an instrument, a resource, or a process. In another study, we compare we administer the Rorschach test, a projective test, together with personality, intelligence, and creativity tests to 3 groups of students. The first group were accelerated gifted students, defined by early entrance to the university. The second group, non-accelerated gifted students, and the third group, non-gifted students. And here we have our finds. Groups of gifted students, especially from the first group, accelerated students, had higher scores on creativity and intelligence when compared to the group of non-gifted students. The results also point out that the Rorschach indicators of distorted thinking correlate positively with general creativity index. And a profile of health, emotional, and social adjustment was also found in the 2 groups of gifted students, groups 1 and 2. So the results of this study suggest that early entrance to the university was not found to be harmful to the student, as many educators and parents still believe, at least in Brazil, that we face a huge resistance toward acceleration in my country. In this study, accelerated students tend to have higher levels of creativity and intelligence, as well as personality traits associated with openness to new ideas and change. And this result also supports the assumption that gifted students are not more likely to experience social motor difficulties when compared to their non-gifted students. The next study involved creativity and acculturation, and we examined the relationship between creativity and the characteristics of international experience and school experience in 39 children and adolescents who had already lived in at least 2 countries. Most were sons and daughters of diplomats. In this study, acculturation was defined as cultural and psychological transformations that occur in individuals and groups as a result of intercultural contact. And according to Barry, an expert in the multiculturalism, there are 2 central aspects to be considered in the acculturation process. The first one is how much the individuals value, maintain the habits and tradition of their native culture. And the second is how much the individuals seek to interact with members of different groups in the host society. And as a result, 4 acculturation strategies are possible. The first one is assimilation, in which the individuals move away from their own cultural values and seeks almost exclusive interaction with people from the host culture. The second acculturation strategy is separation, in which the individuals overvalue the maintenance of their original culture and minimize interactions with members of other culture. The third strategy is integration, in which a positive attitude is adopted toward both cultures, seeking to maintain the values of the native culture and also interact with members of the local community. And the fourth strategy is marginalization, in which the individual separates oneself from the inherited culture and the foreign culture. And the finds of this study indicate above average creative performance in multicultural children and adolescents, driven by emotional factors such as self-confidence and motivation, and cognitive factors such as fluency, flexibility, originality, and openness to new experience, as measured by the Brazilian test of figural creativity. Most participants of this study exhibit high levels of acculturation and adopt integration and assimilation acculturation strategy. So this reflects that the group absorbed the foreign culture, sometimes while maintaining their own culture, the native culture, in other cases, neglecting their cultural heritage. And participants with higher levels of acculturation were significantly more creative than those with lower levels of acculturation. Define suggests that learning about a new culture may help strengthen creativity. And regarding this study, one interesting result was that participants who had returned to their country of origin after their multicultural experience showed high creativity score than those who were still experiencing multiculturalism at the time of the study. So we could ask some question. Would it be possible that temporary international transition may be more beneficial for creativity than permanent migration? It's a possibility. Once the process of adaptation to a new culture would be ongoing, which will require flexibility and openness to new experience, and the people would constantly have to change the way they relate to the world. But this is a topic that would require a further investigation. The last study I would like to share with you is the one in which you compare male and female high school students from military and civilian schools, a very hot topic in Brazil, in terms of creative self-efficacy and creative personal identity. Creative personal identity refers to the extent to which creativity is treated as an important part of an individual's self, an individual's identity, and creative self-efficacy is defined as a person perceive confidence to creatively execute a given creative challenge. And we administer the short scale of creative self designed by a Polish researcher, Karwowski, and his colleagues, after obtaining validated evidence for the Brazilian sample. We did not find significant differences or interactions between civilian and military school students, except for higher creative personal identity in women when compared to men. So, this study raised doubts about the stereotype discourse, at least in Brazil, that highlights the negative role of military schools and certain aspects of students' development, especially those associated with creativity. And one possible explanation is that the internalization of the values of military institutions, such as merit leadership, as well as the pride of being part of a prestigious educational institution, can contribute to shape students' perceptions of creativity and personal identity. Yeah, the military schools in Brazil are recognized, can contribute to the increase in the creative confidence of male, especially female students. The military schools in Brazil are recognized for its educational level of excellence and success of their students and national exams. This is another very interesting topic for a future study. To conclude this presentation, let's return to the question we began with. Why invest in creativity? Creativity not only drives society progress to remarkable inventions and discoveries, but it also transforms the way people relate to the world, to others, to themselves, making them more flexible, open to new ideas, and to others, and more empathetic. Therefore, creativity should be seen not only as an ability, but also as an attitude. In one of the slides of Dr. J. Jung's presentation, and the first day of the conference, there was an image with the message, "Attitude is everything." And this reminds me when I listened to him. So, in the face of harmful disparity inequities worldwide, it's crucial to reflect on educational practice and strategy that can dismantle systems of oppression, accommodate pluralistic realities, and facilitates opportunities for all communities to thrive. And creativity is certainly one of the tools, one of the ways to helping achieve these goals. This conference has been a wonderful opportunity to share and exchange knowledge, innovate ideas, and groundbreak products and procedures from around the world. More than ever, we need to honor cultural and contextual differences. This conference has been an excellent opportunity for collaboration, co-creation of knowledge, and mutual empowerment. Ultimately, it has been a chance to put our creativity into practice. Thank you for attending this session. Thank you for joining us in Braga. Muito obrigada.
Thank you, Denise. On behalf of the executive committee, I have a token of our appreciation for you. I'll put it down here because we're going to make you answer some questions, I think.
Okay, thank you so much.
Is there any question out there in the audience? If you raise your hand.
In a time of AI, where AI is becoming superior to humans, and we are creative. So do you think that AI will ever surpass a human in terms of creativity?
It's a good question. Sorry, Tyler. That's a very good question, and I think Dr. David Dye addresses this question in his keynote. But I think that AI, as other technology, can help teachers, students, and other professions to enhance their creativity. But it depends how AI intelligence and artificial intelligence will be used, how technology will be used. I think that's the problem, how the technology can be used. So I believe that artificial intelligence can foster creativity, but it depends if you use as an instrument, a resource, or a process. And I think if it's used as a process, they can foster creativity, yes. I'm not against artificial intelligence. Thank you for your question.
Another question from the audience? Right over here. David has a question.
David.
Okay, thank you, Denise, for your brilliant presentation. I'm really fond of this topic of creativity, so it was wonderful to hear. I was curious because you've done this systematic review about the assessment of creativity, and that's something that has always puzzled me. Because you analyzed the 5-year period, I think, between 2018 and 23, if I understood correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so my question was whether this systematic review allowed you to see any change in the way creativity is assessed compared to previously. And what do you think will change in the future? Because it seems like we're still talking a lot about scales that were developed in the 60s or in the 70s. And I wonder what will change. Maybe AI will be a tool for better creativity assessment. I don't know. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the future as well.
Thank you, David, for your question. Yes, what we analyze from the data is that, we conclude from the data we analyze, is that the usual traditional ways to measure creativity, the test of creativity, have been the most used instrument to assess creativity, and specifically general creativity. So I think it's time for us to move forward and to focus on measures to assess domain-specific creativity it will be a point, and maybe to use, to assess the climate, as I mentioned here, not only the individual's level of creativity, but the classroom. For example, the classroom climate for creativity, or if you are a psychologist or you work in an organization, maybe to analyze, to measure the organization climate for creativity. So I think the folks must shift from individuals to groups. I think we can think of how, because any project of creativity nowadays is a group project, not one individual project. So how to assess the level of creativity of this group specifically, not from one or two or three individuals. I think maybe this would be a very good start point for future research in the field.
Anis? Anis, raise your hand again.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise, very much for this academic journey on creativity over the past years and decades. It shows the great and rich work you've done over the past years with many things, many samples. I've got a couple of questions. The first one related to the PISA scores and achievement, and how they relate to the creativity, and how we can match, or maybe whether they match or mismatch with the studies you've done since their achievement test, and so whether you can conclude from it anything related or correlated with the achievement PISA achievement tests. And the second related to the last study, which is very interesting one. It's about military and civil schools, I think. I'm interested to know about, maybe I missed something here, is about the scales being used, whether they're self-reporting, and what were the findings, whether you found, for example, some differences between the two, how they would consider, for example, a certain group that they're more creative than other, and whether this is, something can maybe sometime rely on or so. Thank you very much.
Okay. Regarding the first question, PISA is, I think the first result were published in 2022, so it's pretty new results. And what I like most is that PISA decided to assess creative thinking abilities instead of only mathematics and science. So I think this could help schools to value and invest in creativity, right? And I know that the way they are measuring creativity, it's a general creativity. It's not a specific domain creativity. So, but I think it's the start point. They are trying. There was a group of research who designed the instrument to assess the creativity thinking abilities of students worldwide. And I think it was a very experts in the field, and I think it's the beginning, the start point. So they analyzed, there are plenty of research groups analyzing those data from PISA with respect to creative thinking abilities results. So I think it's a very promising place to work with. We have very interesting finds. And maybe it's not the best way to measure creative thinking worldwide, but at least it's the beginning. And with respect to your second questions, we didn't find any differences between civilian and military students, school students. So we were expecting that maybe the civilian students would be more creative than the military, I think because our stereotypes, at least in Brazil, we have many stereotypes. But we were surprised, and I think it was a good result because we can think of our prejudices, our stereotypes, to think of, to reflect about it. And the only significant difference was that women, compared to men, independently of this type of school, scored higher than the boys. So we can say that there are gender differences, but not differences regarding the type of school. Okay.
Please join me in thanking Denise one more time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kyle.
And thank you again to the Jody Mahoney Center at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock for sponsoring this keynote session. If you're not familiar with it, I'm sure that Dr. Robinson would be happy to talk with you as the conference concludes tomorrow. Also, don't forget that we are now going into the Port of Honor, so please make your way to the cloisters and you'll be directed into the chapel, where we will celebrate the 50th anniversary of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children, and also enjoy some music from a former student of ANAISH, the local organizing committee.